Here we are. Welcome, everyone. Another episode of ShiftED podcast coming to you. We're up in northern Montreal today and enjoying some beautiful sun, finally. Little, little touches of warmth coming through, which is great. Um, and I have such a wonderful guest today, Michelle Cummins coming in from New York. And she's going to share, she wrote this, well, she updated and added to this great book called The First Year Teacher Survival Guide, the fifth edition. And we're going to talk about that. But Michelle also works on AI through Brisk Teachings. Is that correct, Michelle?
That's correct. I'm the education advisor at Brisk Teaching. It's a AI-enabled Chrome extension.
That's right. That's right. And you were previously Teacher Pay Teacher, also CAO as well.
Yes, the Chief Academic Officer at Teachers Pay Teachers. Yes, for
Amazing.
many years working with the teacher authors and the catalog there. Yeah.
Cool. So lots of great insight and information that Michelle will share with us today. And please go and check this book out, particularly if you're first, second, third year teacher. It's a daunting task, and we'll kind of get into that a bit. But this book is just full of great strategies and ideas and ways to support yourself as you become a teaching professional. So, Michelle, before we begin here, tell me a couple of poignant moments in your educational landscape so far. What were some turning points or some moments that really stuck out for you as you were coming into being an educator and supporting educators, consulting, etc.?
Chris, good morning. And I'm
Morning.
delighted to be here having this conversation with you. My origin story as an educator goes back to childhood. I am one of 8 children, and in a big family, I had a ready-made class of students. I had my first chalkboard installed in the playroom when I was probably 6 or 7. As a 6th grader, I asked my teacher, Ms. Beck, who's still a close friend of mine throughout my lifetime, I asked her if I could go teach the first graders how to read, and she set me up with an internship as a 6th grader.
Wow.
In high school, I had read everything Ted Sizer had written and chose to go to college, to Brown University, to study with him. I got to work in the essential schools. He introduced me to Elliot Washer, who was then co-founding the Big Picture Learning Schools. These were all kind of mileposts for me, signposts along my journey that said I was headed in the right direction. I became a high school English and social studies teacher. I taught in Boston. I got to teach in the international schools in Switzerland. I taught in Oregon, and then decided that I could help more teachers and more students as an administrator. And so from there, I became a principal, both at the elementary level and then at the high school level. I was an assistant superintendent and got to create entire programs and K-12 educational opportunities for students to improve outcomes for all the students in the community. And I think that the through line in my work, in my career, has been that desire that regardless of where a child happens to be attending school, to improve their educational outcomes and uplift the teachers that are working with them.
Absolutely. Wow. I mean, beautiful journey so far, and so much happening too. Like, it always seems to you're at the forefront of these innovative practices that are coming out, and what great opportunities to kind of see into the future of education a bit.
Well, sure. I was a curriculum director during the Teachers Pay Teachers movement as it was starting.
Right.
And so I could see from my teachers their need to have supplemental curriculum and the gap that they felt between the adopted curriculum and the students that were in front of them. And so to be able to be the chief academic officer at Teachers Pay Teachers and work with that incredible team and teachers around the world to share collective wisdom,
Right.
during the
Right.
pandemic and beyond.
Mm,
And now to be working with Brisk Teaching, which is at the forefront of AI and generative AI in
yeah.
education, to help teachers not just with the efficiency and saving time in their work,
Mm,
but with real student engagement and realizing the promise of personalizing learning and
right.
differentiating for students.
Absolutely. Which tend teachers tend to struggle with, right? That differentiation. We just did a bunch of work last year on it, and I was surprised at how it's just, you know, this idea that I have to create like 8 lesson plans is just not the case. It's little tweaks here, little tweaks there, so that you can widen your walls a little bit, so that everybody feels like they can achieve. Um, but getting beyond, like the differentiation of what it is, yeah, it was always seemed a little bit of a struggle, but I totally agree with you. I think AI is opening those doors for differentiation big time right now. Because it's all available. I mean, just simply having to input a text and having a couple of different reading levels, just that alone is just wow. Um, it really helps
Yeah.
teachers a lot.
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure. Changing reading levels is one. Changing languages for comprehensible
Right.
input. You think
Mm,
about, I got to work with Carol Ann Tomlinson and all of her differentiation strategies
right.
and creating learning contracts or rafts for, English instruction. It is so easy now. We talk a lot
Mm,
about the 80-20 rule in
right.
generative
I was
AI,
going to ask
that
you about that.
there is no replacement for teachers' expertise and their knowledge of their students. And so AI will get you 80% of the way to completing a task, but that expertise
Mm,
of a teacher is so important. Um,
mm,
but yeah, so I brought all of that into the writing of the first year teacher survival guide. And
right.
I was just so delighted to be able to support new teachers in this way.
Absolutely. Yeah, we work a lot with pre-service teachers, and um, it's an interesting clientele. And I guess one of my questions I wanted to ask you about first year teachers, again, in your experience and what you think, is did first year's teachers go into their teaching profession and tend to always teach the way they were taught?
That's a great question. I think that like muscle memory, that the experiences we have with our teachers are very formative, and they can
Mm,
either be a great role model or an opposite barometer of who we become as teachers. And
right.
so I think that it is really important for teachers new to the profession and experienced teachers to really
Mhm,
intentionally identify how their education has informed who they are as a teacher, and to be
mm,
able to say these are the things that work within the classroom for my students today, and these may be things that had worked previously for me as a student but no longer are effective strategies.
right. 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 And in the fifth edition, so this is the one that you were updating, and the latest one of the first year teacher's guide, survival guide. When do you determine to like do an update of it? Like, when would a new edition come? Like, what would inform that okay, we need to do some updates on this? Because when was it originally published? The first edition. Do you
The first edition was published in 2002 by Julia Thompson, a high
right?
school English teacher. And she has since retired. And
Hmm.
Josie Bass invited me to update her work. The most recent edition had been 2018. And of
Okay.
course, much has changed since
Yeah.
then. And so I was able to talk with Julia while she wasn't involved in the writing of the book. I feel like we accomplish nothing alone. whether we are in a classroom or writing a book. And so I benefited from talking with her, from interviewing 65 teachers who are currently in the classroom before writing the book. And you think about all that we have learned from the pandemic moment, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's digital tools and generative AI, or I think we've gotten much more sophisticated about social emotional learning and the
Right.
behavioral needs, the behavioral support needs of students.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really worked hard to infuse all of those learnings into the book as well.
Right. Right. And what are the biggest, you think, misconceptions about those first years? Like teachers going in thinking one thing and then quickly realizing that, okay, I got to think about management or my relationship building, or how am I going to keep developing as a professional? Um, I know that you talk a lot about those within the book, student engagement as well. Do teachers come in to their first years teaching with certain misconceptions about how to do these things?
It's a great question, Chris. And I don't think that we can paint with too broad a brush with teachers, because
Mm-hmm.
teachers are coming to the profession from a range of backgrounds, a range of experiences, some of them previously in careers and making a change mid-career. And so
Right.
I think that in my experience with working with new teachers, there is a idealistic impulse that brings teachers to the profession.
Mm-hmm.
I feel it to this day that it is a way to change the world for the better. It is a
Right.
way
Right.
to to change the lives of children one by one, classroom by classroom, school by school,
Mm.
and that drives them. And when you talk to a group of teachers about their why, they're really great at articulating it. I
Right.
think that some teachers come to the profession to teach a subject, and
Mm.
they realize that there's a shift in paradigm. And in order to be successful as a teacher, you have to connect with your students and you have to teach your students first. And
Right.
the content is a vehicle for that relationship. And so I think that there is a real need to think about classroom management differently. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
you asked
Mm-hmm.
about classroom management, and that is the number one subject that people want me to speak about. But
Okay.
you can't talk about classroom management without talking about the relationship development and talking about the
Absolutely.
ways in which you connect with students and connect students with ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in my pre-service work with teachers, I have them do this activity where I give them a prompt, right? And I ask them, what does your ideal classroom look like, feel like? And they can make something very concrete. They have to make a little prototype of with dollar store stuff, just so that there's a representation. And then they have to speak to it. And over, I hear, I want it to be a welcoming class. I want them to want to come into my class. And I want to be able to support them, help them grow. And I'm like, I love it. And then I ask, how are you going to do that? Right. And those front ideas, those first initial, like, welcoming, warm class, they trust me. But to go beyond that, like, how do I start establishing what are strategies that you will use to start building that? um, can you offer some strategies or suggestions for that? Because it is so crucial, those relationship building. How would a first year student, teacher start to kind of get that vehicle running?
Sure, to move from the hope and the goal and the big idea to practice.
Reality.
Um,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. Larry Ferlazzo recently asked me what was an underutilized low prep strategy that teachers could use for this. And I
Right.
said relationship development can start at the door. It takes
Mm,
a lot to be able to greet students at the door, but to do a temperature check with your students and to give them a fist bump or a high five and greet them by
yep.
name and check in on how the game went or how a sick parent is feeling,
Mm,
all of that matters. And if you can greet students at the door and welcome them to their day, if they're in elementary school, or to their class period, it goes a long way to setting the tone and getting students ready to learn. I
mm,
think that there are things that we can do within the way that we design curriculum to invite students' voices and to invite them to share themselves. Um,
okay.
and so, whether it is um, uh, in the early days of the school year, making sure that everybody knows everyone's name. There
Right.
are lots of name games you can use when you
Hmm.
think about four corners exercises, where you are asking students to vote with their feet and choose a
Mm.
corner to go to based on whether or not they like 80s music. If they like it, they don't like
Right.
it, they're neutral on the topic, and then they can talk to other students in the classroom
Right.
who share that same opinion, and you can
Yeah.
build a community of learners. It's not just the relationship between the teacher and the student, it is
Right.
the whole community of learners. I had a
Sure.
health teacher at the high school where I was principal, and she would always ask students to write on an index card what she needed to know to be their best teacher. And
Mm.
it revealed so
Wow.
many things when you make that
Hmm.
invitation to students
Right.
to be
Right.
in relationship. You can find out that they need glasses. You can find out that they
Mm.
live in their car. There are all kinds of insights that you can get, but we must have strategies to ask.
Yep. Yep. And I like that you said too that the relationships, the content will come through that. Like it seems this fixation on, oh, we have all this stuff we got to cover, got to cover, got to cover, and we kind of forget about the humanity that exists within your community. And I like it's not a class, it's a
Mm.
community,
Yeah.
and you're
I
working together.
Yes,
Mm,
I have a wonderful example of this. Teacher who's now in his second year of the profession. He teaches multilingual learners,
mm,
and he really has a value he brings to the profession of being in relationship with students. Of He sets this very high bar of wanting the all the light bulbs to go off in his classroom. And so he started a unit of study taking a field trip with students to visit a local college art exhibit.
mm,
The students then modeled their artwork and their poetry and writing off of this exhibit that showed silhouettes of people with their stories told in poem format inside those
mm.
silhouettes. And the
Wow.
students, he said, dived into this project, interviewing their family members and community members to hear their narratives. And the students worked harder on this project than anything all year and shared incredible insights about themselves, their lives, their cultures, their humanity.
Right.
And they
Right.
felt so respected, so uplifted, so seen,
Mm,
that he talked about how they saw themselves and their families in a different light after that experience. And I think that's a great example of how a teacher uses that relationship development to explore the world of ideas and to deepen students' academic strengths and
mhm.
deepen their learning while inviting a deepening of the relationships.
Absolutely. I love that idea too. I often tell teachers that you got to get their hearts involved, right? You got to spark some kind of like something inside them that interests them or talks to them. And then you also got to get their hands involved, creating, making, drawing, poem, but then also the cognitive as well. And if you get those three things running, you're going to have some good learning that takes place, or it will stick with them. Like I always have this concept of how do we make it stick? So it's not like in one ear out the other. Um, and we,
Mhm.
through our work with teachers, we've noticed that think about those three parts as you're designing something. And I think it's very similar to what you're saying about that example you gave, where all those three components are involved. And it's just like humming, learning, happening.
Yeah.
So fascinating. Well, that's a great story too.
Mhm.
We don't talk enough about these great, positive, amazing stories that, I mean, they happen all around us. Sometimes we get so fixated on the issues rather than the beauty of what's already happening and
Sure.
what happens daily. That's
Yeah, that is so true. Um, I had a really great question from a first year teacher recently, and I was able to give her um, some good strategies. She was really taking on a big question, and that was around how do we create a classroom community where civil discourse, where respectful discourse occurs? And so layering onto those relationships and the high expectations for students, being able to really unpack for them so how to have respectful conversation. And I had observed a fourth grade teacher who was really great at providing sentence stems that focused on I statements for students. Things like, I suggest that, or I'd like to add, or I respectfully disagree because, uh,
mm,
and literally laminated those things on the table for students to be using in their conversations as fourth graders. And you can imagine moving that through the grade levels and the importance of having Socratic seminars where students can have conversations and add on to each other's ideas and
mm,
respectfully disagree and provide evidence for their claims.
mhm,
And I thought that this was a moment where a first year teacher was really bringing forward something important that experienced teachers needed to hear as well. And so I've
mhm,
started adding those recommendations. I have a section in the book about teaching for
mm.
civil discourse as well.
Yep.
And I think that's also an example of a moment when a first year teacher um, brought their fresh impressions and their fresh perspectives in a way to a whole faculty that could improve teaching and learning across the school. I think that's
Yeah.
one of the things that I encourage principals and
Mhm.
cooperating teachers to do is to share those fresh impressions and that fresh energy of new teachers to improve practices across their departments and across their schools.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's shift gear a little bit. We're going to connect this though, but with your new work with AI, are you finding that, and we can even apply it to first year, second year, third year teachers, are they understanding AI? Like, are the misconceptions about AI interfering with the tools being used?
That's a wonderful question. AI literacy is not just for our
Mhm.
students. It's for
Right.
educators as well. Do you know that March 28th is AI Literacy Day? And
No, I
they're
didn't.
gonna
I'm going to
they're
write
gonna
that down.
be they're gonna be activities all across the world for an
Okay, cool.
AI Literacy Day. Of course, it's not just one day, but it will bring attention to the topic. So
Right.
so new teachers, experienced teachers are often all in the same boat when it comes to generative AI.
Mm,
Administrators who are trying to lead their districts in emerging technologies can have a pretty steep learning curve. And so it is vitally important that we know what AI is and what it isn't, what the capabilities are. I think that as I said before, teachers are able to use AI for all kinds of efficiencies. We know that's happening across industries. We know that teachers can create lesson plans, can create behavior support plans, can create high quality instructional materials to engage students. And that frees them up to have more time for those interpersonal interactions with students.
Right.
We
Right.
know that that it is critically important, just as we want AI to be a tool for students to use for learning, not to replace their learning. We need
Mm.
to make sure that that's true for the professionals as well, that teachers are not um, creating a resource and not reading it, or giving feedback and not reading it. One of the reasons that Brisk has such an incredible feedback tool is that it will put inline comments on a student's Google Doc, but the student will not be able to see them until the teacher has read them, revised
Mm.
them, clicked comment to make sure that they are appropriate to the learner, that 80
Right.
20 rule.
Hmm.
um, but but I believe that generative AI is having a powerful impact on teachers feeling like their job is doable, that
Mm.
the overwhelming workload is now doable with an AI assistant, that having a brainstorming partner to think about how you want to approach a particular unit of study or a lesson is
Mm.
powerful for provoking creativity and thought, but it
Right.
cannot replace the teacher's expertise and their knowledge of their students.
Right. That's what you have to bring in. That's your 20. And also making sure that it fits within the context.
Yes,
It's
your professional judgment matters. Your leadership in
yes,
the classroom matters. Absolutely.
right. And what do you think the uptake is right now, like percentage wise, with teachers using AI tools? Do you have a feeling of how many in the US are, you know, dabbling a little bit? Is it a high number, or do you think it's pretty low still? Like we're just kind of starting off.
Chris, from what I have read,
Mm.
educators can be cautious adopters of new technology. Right now, I know at Brisk we have approximately 1 in 6 teachers in the United States are using
Mm.
our product. I believe that there is a lot of interest, and that districts can often be cautious in their approach. There are some that are very innovative and very entrepreneurial in the way that they work, and have, adopt multiple tools to explore and do some research and development, and others who really want to make sure that they are clear about the all of the policies and guidelines, and
Right. Right.
concerned about academic integrity, of course, and making sure that those building blocks are there before
Mhm.
they move forward with adopting new tools. But I
Right.
think that in the same way that we were talking about differentiation, that one of the things that administrators are understanding is that high quality instructional materials from publishers and their adopted curriculum only go so far, and that there
Mm.
are needs of the students that are not met by that, and
Right.
that something like generative AI and Brisk Teaching used in conjunction with those high quality instructional materials can really create unlimited potential for students,
Mm.
create um, a situation where you can infuse education with students' interests and questions, and provide a 24/7 tutor for those students. I was
Right.
talking
Right.
with an amazing group of students recently, with Students for Innovation,
Hmm.
and they are advocating for their teachers to talk to them and teach them about generative AI. And
They
they
see the
were,
writing on the wall, don't they?
well, that they say this is a tool that we need to learn how to use, or it's going to use us. This is a tool we
Right.
need to use for college and career readiness. And if we don't get to learn about it in schools, where are we supposed to learn about it?
That's
And
right.
they were using AI to to learn about things that were interesting to them that maybe their teachers couldn't teach them yet. One student had created a chatbot that was teaching him all about nanotechnology. It was fascinating. Yes.
That's cool that you make your own bot to teach you. You know, it's like the world just the doors just fly open when kids can harness that kind of power.
Yes,
So
students
cool.
can learn from anyone, anywhere in the world at any time. They can now
Yeah.
learn with a generative AI chatbot who has access to a great deal of information in the world, and schools will be um, manifesting this and seeing this implemented within their classrooms as
Mm.
a powerful tool to unlock learning.
Yeah, for sure. We're working a lot with teachers with the AI ideas, and we're still kind of waiting on students a little bit. However, I do encourage teachers to talk about AI. How are models made? Is it ethical? Is it like there's so much you can talk about without them having to interact? And I'm talking just because of age restrictions up here in Canada anyway. We have certain age restrictions that have access and others that don't. And teachers are like, well, they're too young. What do I do with, talk to them? There's so many resources out there that you can use that get those conversations happening. And then multiply it, you get to know your kids more, what they think, how they feel about it, where they think it's going. Um, and those conversations super rich. And also get to know your kids.
Yes, absolutely. That is so true. I think that one of the things that I love about Brisk is that we have a boost product that is student facing. And so students can experience that personalized tutor that meets them where they are and ask them questions to help scaffold their learning where they are. And meet the learning objectives that are part of that experience. But that can be a tutor, that can be a brainstorming, that can be preparation for a debate. I watched
Right.
I was in a classroom of 11th graders who were working on fine tuning their argumentative essays about a particular um, article that their teacher had given them, and they were using Boost to fine tune those arguments that they would then
Oh,
write
that's cool.
about. And when
That's
you
cool.
see these modalities that allow students to really engage in critical thinking and have those light bulbs all turned on simultaneously in the classroom, it's very exciting.
Very special. I mean, this feels like this conversation, light bulbs are just firing off. Michelle, your insights are just so amazing. Like it's just really been a pleasure talking with you and having this. It's a fun conversation, and I love that we're putting this positive spin and finding these great stories that uh, fear should never exist. Go do it, give it a try, find your supporters out there, find your champions out there, and keep moving forward. Because the
Mhm.
world will, and if we don't keep
Yeah.
going forward too, yeah,
Yeah. I'm wondering if it would be okay if I read just a little bit from the book
please,
to end, because,
please.
excuse me, I so honor and respect um, and am in awe of people who are going into education now. And I want to share with you how I start the book, The First Year Teacher Survival Guide. It says, congratulations on your choice of profession. Every day that you are a teacher, you will know you're making a difference in the world. Something will make you laugh every day, and you will never be bored. Guaranteed. Teaching can also be complex and a stressful career. My hope is that you will find in this extensive reference book the strategies, tools, and activities you need, not just to survive, but to thrive in a long career as an educator. And because the word courage is nestled inside of the word encouragement, my hope is that this book speaks courage into the hearts of first year teachers. May the encouragement you find in this book give you the courage and confidence to teach in a way that uplifts all of your students. And that is
Beautiful.
my invitation to those who have the courage and the passion to join us in a long and fulfilling career as educators.
Absolutely. One of the best professions in the world, in my opinion, because you never know what's going to happen in a day. But there are tears, there are smiles, there's laughs, you feel it all. Um,
Isn't
and
that the
it's,
truth?
yeah, yeah. And I mean, the future should hold all that as well. We're hoping anyway. Well, Michelle, thanks so much. Go and get this book, people, particularly teachers. I think it's like, even if you're an experienced teacher, there's so many nuggets in this book, the first year teacher survival guide. Get the fifth edition because it's the most up to date, so you'll have all the nuances in there as well of 2025 that we're in. So thanks again. So much fun. So much fun.
Thank you, Chris. My pleasure.